that comment.
Sorry, guys, I just want to make sure I recorded that. Thank you for sharing that, Cynthia, because I think that's something that everybody has, again, experienced at some point. And I'm sure to take that even farther, I'm sure some of you have gotten the feedback about your volunteerism with your chapters and your time and effort in that. And is it of value, and why are you doing it, especially if you don't have somebody above you that sees that there's value in that. I wanted to share, though, with everybody to make sure that they look in the chat. Penny and Trudy did type in all of their lunch and learns or their subject matters that they are having. So that's a good indication of what kind of topics people are talking about at the chapter level. So great. Thank you, Trudy, for leading us off with that. That was a great discussion about those lunch and learns. And I think they're a great way, especially doing them virtual for those 60 minutes. I assume you're having them around the lunch hour. I would challenge some chapters that maybe not always lunch is good for your members. Maybe it's mornings, it's coffee chats, whatever you may want to call them. And you may want to try a couple at different times. You may find that the morning you get a different set of your members, or that's when you get a larger attendance, or maybe that last hour of the day. What works for one may not work in a different coast or a different chapter, but know your membership and where they have ability to give you an hour. Is it truly over lunch, or is it first thing in the morning that works for your group? Oh, Penny, you do yours in the morning. Okay.
I was wondering if I could bring something else up.
Absolutely. Welcome.
Hi. Ours actually started at 11. And so our educational sessions are 11 to 12. And then our business meeting is 12 to 12:30.
Okay.
So we usually see a drop off during our business meeting, but not too much. My question is on, I've been hearing a lot of other chapters the past 3 years now talk about sponsorships. And we do sponsors with our reverse trade show. That's always been the case, right? And they help us out tremendously. But I know that some of the other chapters use sponsors for everything, throughout their whole year, their organization. And I think in our group, there's this mentality that if we have a sponsor, it means we're going to be swayed by them to do all our business with them.
Yep.
And so I think in the next couple of years, that mentality is going to change, and we're going to be thinking, why can't we have a sponsor outside of the reverse trade show? We're a small chapter. So I don't know, Tracy, if you want to jump in, money wise, it's not like we can go hog wild and bring in a bunch of money. But at the same time, it's like, what if there's one sponsor that wants to help out the rest of the year and do lunches or something like that? How can we change the mentality with our board and with our group so that they're not like, oh, we can't do this? Because I think I tried this a couple of years ago with scholarships, and it was like, no, we can't do that.
I think it's a very valid question, and it is something that has gone around and around and around. I want to hear what everybody else is doing too. But one thing I want to say that I hear chapters who do lots of sponsors, and their first response is that our chapter did not pick Sourcewell to be the only sponsor. We put it out there and anybody could be a sponsor. So it's not like there was a picking and choosing of one or the other. Everybody had the opportunity to put their dollar amount in and to sponsor something. And we went with those that gave us money. So it's correct. It is a mentality change that because we have, I'm going to use Sourcewell's logo up there, that everything has to be about Sourcewell. We put a call out for sponsors and Sourcewell raised their hands. And that is changing that mindset. But I have some other ideas of what chapters are doing, but I want to hear what everybody else is doing. Penny, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so we couple things. One, we typically advertise our sponsorships. We put in there what they get with that. So we do them, like for fall conference, we do them for our trade shows. And we say, at this level, you get to come hang out with us at the social, you get to join us for lunch, you get ad on your website or whatever. One of the things we started doing, gosh, it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago now, is that we let the vendors be in the room with us at fall conference. So we have a big ballroom and we are in there. We have space for about 10 to 15 tables and we let them set up right there in the room. So that was tough. When we first did that, we had people freaking out. They're like, oh my God, I can't do that. It's a conflict of, just panic stricken. We've never had a problem with it. They love that they get to kind of hear what we're talking about. And we still have a business meeting that they are not, they are not involved with that. We have separate and sometimes we have a session where we don't let them be in the room because we usually do like a roundtable discussion. And so we kick them out of the room for that because we want to be able to speak freely. But it's worked really well for us. We still have a couple of old school folks that it still gives them a little heartburn. But it's just part of that whole strategic procurement process of, there are partners. And so it's really hard to build that mentality with some folks, but you have to look at it more as a partnership rather than they're giving us money to go do something.
Well, I think that's the main thing is it's drilled into us that we don't accept money
Right.
from these people and I think it's that fine line between where is it overstepping that while still being partnership and that sort of thing.
Yeah, Tracy, I even know people who won't drop their cards like if they walk through the expo at Forum. They won't because they're like, oh no, I can't accept anything. And it was really funny. We had that discussion with our attorney here one time because we actually had a staff member win something of some monetary value. And he was like, look, if everybody there has the same opportunity to win, then it's not a problem. So that's his opinion. Now, I know not every agency probably has that opinion, but we had to have that conversation.
Something else to think about too, and again, I'm in the mindset of how to kind of set your mind at ease with board members that may not be comfortable or that mindset of why you choose one or the other. Our legal counsel has always told us to tell the chapters that when you have a logo or something electronic on your website, that it never goes to a specific product. It never goes to a contract. It just goes to a generic website. That way it reinforces that the Copper chapter, the Rocky Mountain chapter is not endorsing a product or a contract, but it's just their, sourcewell.com or amazon.com or Home Depot, whatever it is. So that's something else to keep in mind, is that you're not linking to something very specific that would show, oh, we want to promote X. There's no promotion of that. But again, I think it's that mentality of, Penny said it, everybody has the opportunity. Every vendor could be a sponsor. You're not picking one because that's who you want to be friends with or to have something with it. There's a lot of mind shift change in that. Cynthia, I also saw that you post that you have mixed feelings and the mixed feelings with the sponsorships. It's also very clear, as Penny said, on the flip side, is that they know exactly what they're getting for the money. So to decide that they get, a 5-minute speaking engagement, they're allowed in an event, they'll have their logo posted. You need to be very clear on what they get for that dollar amount. And Teresa, we see chapters doing this to exactly what you said, not just for one event, but for, let's say you want to do lunch and learns and they're in person and there's going to be food at them, that somebody sponsors it through the whole year, or a part of your website, if you're not with NIGP's free website, that it pays for that and their logo goes up for that month. A lot of chapters take advantage of and change their mindset to look at it as it's money to our chapter. They have shifted from it means that we support Home Depot or Sourcewell to that vendor has a relationship with our chapter and helps supports us, keeps us going, puts things back to our members that we may not be able to afford on our own. It's constantly reinforcing what that sponsorship does and not we just like X, Y, and Z. Trudy, how about you guys in Rocky Mountain?
We have had, throughout this year, we've had discussions with vendors, and vendor philosophy on trade shows is starting to shift. They don't just want to be at a trade show and people walk by to grab things from their table, because the vendors are saying, we're not getting value out of that. We want time in front of your members. So how can we work together to have that time? And if they can do a lunch and learn, or if they can be, you know, a presentation during the lunch hour at a conference, that's what they're looking for. And that's what we've heard. And so we're kind of shifting to that. How can we be a partner rather than, oh my gosh, let's just hold out our hand for money at conferences? Yes, we'll take it. Don't get me wrong. But we also want to build those partners so they're seeing value of what RMGPA is doing, and we can help them to, our goal is to increase our membership. So if they can help us do that, then we can help them increase their sales by having additional agencies, you know, utilizing their services.
I agree, Trudy. And I think all over it's a mind shift change of how it used to be an us and a them, and you kept them at arm's length. And I think the reality is you can't keep them at arm's length. There has got to be a relationship. And I think there are those who have been around a while, as I said before, this is how we always did things, and that's how our relationship was. And I don't think that's what it is going to be going forward. And it's okay to have a relationship or conversations and dialogue. And again, doesn't mean favoritism or we support. It's educating and learning and creating those relationships to help us make better decisions down the line.
And that's exactly what we've seen in Colorado and Wyoming.
So can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
Do any of the chapters, the members that you have on the call now have a person that their role in their board is for that specific relationship building and fostering? Because you can really, you know, if you do, you've got that person, number one, that they can really kind of own the process, and they can be one voice. So they're not going to get mixed messages for that. Wanted to ask that question.
Cynthia, you said yes, you have somebody that manages those.
Yeah, we have somebody who's been with us for years and lots of years of experience, and he kind of took it on and is trying to build it. Of course, you know, we started like a year and a half before the pandemic, so we're just doing our first live in person this December since the pandemic, so we'll have to see where that goes. But yeah, it's been an interesting process. Everything you guys are talking about, that's exactly what we've experienced too. Is, you know, favoritism. You know, we had one vendor that I hate to say it, the one that I'm talking about, you know, they kind of expected something in return, like orders to come in because they sponsored our website. Well, almost everybody, they did office supplies mostly. Everybody's already got a contract for that. And so naturally, nobody even signed up after a year of sponsorship. Nobody even signed up for an account because they couldn't, they were under contract. So there was some unrealistic expectations there, I think. And I'm sure our Bill Cure is our chair. I'm sure he addressed that with them, but they had to keep trying because they were a smaller business trying to enter the field. I get it.
June, how about you guys in Iowa? How are you guys with vendors and sponsors?
So I was just going to mention, so the state of Iowa has hired an employee that works, they only do cooperatives. So they are working to create the relationship with the vendors, and then to have more opportunities so that the rest of they're doing the work for us, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so that is helping us. And then that person also is educating some of the smaller communities or the new employees on how can cooperatives help you, and are there are there contracts that we're needing? So he can, you know, or he or she, I should say, can reach out and see if there's something that they can bring to Iowa that's already been done.
How does that play out in the chapter itself? Does that person or those that have a role within the chapter to allow sponsors?
We haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
And so, and the person actually left, and that position has been vacant now for a few months. And I know they got a new employee that started. So, and she'll have a lot to learn. But I know, Carl, our president, his goal was to do a reverse trade show, which we've talked about doing for years. This fall, I thought, you know, with the fall meeting, but I don't think, I mean, nothing has even started yet, so I'm pretty sure that might have to go to another meeting. So we're trying,
It's all you can do.
right, Chandra? I always get her name wrong.
It's all right. It's Chandra. Yeah, I'm sitting here taking notes so that we can talk about this at our next board meeting. So
Yeah.
James, I like your idea. It's funny, as things develop, a couple of years ago when social media started, no one ever thought about having a social media chair. And now that's almost kind of taken for granted that you have somebody that manages that aspect for you because it plays a big role. And maybe looking at somebody within your chapter as a volunteer that manages your sponsorship programs, that's truly what they do. There is a single lens looking at it and building those relationships and building expectations of what you do within the chapter. It's not necessarily a group board decision. It might filter, Teresa, to your point, it might filter a little bit better to your board if it's not your board sitting and making those decisions, but you have a committee and a sponsor chair that looks at, again, it's, you put that out there to everybody, any vendor can be a sponsor, and who chooses to do that. And it has no connection to you as people sitting on the board saying, because my name's tied to that and I'm tied to this agency, that means we're supporting X. And there's got to be that, it may allow a good separation. James, I like that idea a lot. Trudy?
And I'll just add on to that. We have a chapter enhancement committee that does that. There's a little bit of different philosophy because they are sending emails and saying, hey, do you want to sponsor us? Whereas vendors are saying, well, why can't you pick up the phone? So if you guys do start moving forward that way, I would absolutely recommend making that, contact, making it personal phone calls and then follow up with an email, because the vendors want to understand that, hey, we're important enough for a phone call and not just an email that says, hey, will you give us money? If that works, fantastic. But most vendors want that personal connection so they can meet with someone at a conference and put a name to a face, or, pick up the phone and be like, hey, can we do this? That would be the only recommendation I would have with that, because like I said, we do have someone who does that. Their focus is on vendors just giving them money rather than that whole sponsorship philosophy.
Trudy, I love that. And I remember Duff with Sourcewell, it was almost a year ago, did a little snippet for us. I think it was for Chapter Academy when we were virtual, and talked about, he goes, I am less likely to engage you if I am part of a blanket email out asking for dollars. He says, but if you start having a relationship connection, calling me, then I may and will choose to support your chapter for life. You have now brought me in a different way. We're having conversations about what my needs are, what your needs are. And I'm 10 times more likely to keep and stay engaged than if I'm just part of a blanket to everybody. And again, I think it's part of that building of that network. I think you nailed it just a few seconds ago. I think the landscape of what that group wants and needs is a little bit different. And it's meeting there in the middle to benefit the chapter as well as them.
Hey, Jen, I remember he also said, you know, just like us, they have a budget that they plan for annually. And so the sooner you can get to him, and if it's a year ahead, that's even better because they can plan for it and put it in their budget too. And I think that's true of all vendors. You know, their salespeople have a budget just like we do.
Yeah, so Teresa, think about that when you're looking outside of your Verse trade show and looking at things throughout the year. You don't want to come 2 months before to somebody and say, we're having an in-person lunch, would you be our sponsor? You probably may be less likely to get dollars from that because they've planned out their year and they don't have dollar amounts anymore. So Trudy.
And I just to add on to that, I would recommend you take full advantage of the vendors at Forum. So we went to Leaders Edge and the vendors were there. We talked to all of them. I can't say all of them, a majority of them in person. They were excited about, you know, the vision and kind of our plan. And so they were very, very excited to meet with us. And then you can follow up with that email and make those phone calls when you get back from Forum. But Forum is a great opportunity to have these discussions, tell them who your chapter is, what you're doing, what your goals for the year are, and if they can't do it this year, ask them, hey, are you guys willing to sponsor us next year? Here's what our plan looks like next year. We're going to have 2 in-persons, 2 virtual, and you know, these are the opportunities. So go into Forum with a plan of what your year next year may look like, because then you can give them, you might not be able to give them specific dates, but you can say, hey, this is what we're looking at. I'll reach out after Forum and maybe we can have additional discussions.
Trudy, and I love that because in the end, while the vendors love to come to our big show, not everybody that they meet at that show is the one that's a decision maker. And in the end, they want that local representative. So making that connection at the Institute and then those follow-ups, well, who's in my region, who's in my area that I can then work with is a key way to do that. Cynthia, you asked about a list of vendors. On the NIGP website, there's a list of everybody that's going to be. We don't do an email list, just like we don't sell our members list to them. But you can see all of the vendors that are there this year. So
Thank
Teresa,
you.
did you get a little bit there to take away? I don't know that we didn't answer or solve your problem necessarily.
No, I think the main thing that you had mentioned was open it up to everyone and who comes first. I mean, that was probably the main thing right there, is that we open it to everyone, and whichever vendor wants to come in, you know, we did some process. So I think that's a huge thing. The sponsorship chair was a great idea too.
Good.
I like I said, our reverse trade show does bring in quite a bit of money for us. That hasn't always been the case that, you know, we're in right now. But what if the people that normally do a reverse trade show leave or aren't interested, and it's just not a strong show, and we're looking to give scholarships, or we want to provide lunches, and some of that stuff can't be done unless there's some sort of money coming in. So that's kind of my thing, is that I want to start bringing up the conversation so that if it doesn't happen with my term as secretary, maybe the next, you know, Tracy or Casey, if they keep on going with Copper Chapter, that this is a conversation they might want to have with the younger group coming in.
Yep.
Hey, Teresa, notice Penny's comment earlier in the chat where she mentioned about incorporating sponsors in a business panel discussion on topics that they can all discuss. So they're not just doing a sales pitch.
Yep.
I think that's a fantastic idea. I hope that the meeting or the notes are able to be captured, because I want to share this with Bob, our chapter president, as well.
Even that was tough in prior years. People
Yeah.
like our chapter did not want to bring in vendors to discuss topics.
Like even in a panel open
Even in a
discussion.
panel,
Oh,
it
okay,
was
okay.
like, you know, it was something that the whole board had to discuss. And,
Yeah.
you know, will we let a vendor into our educational meeting type thing? And it was just, I didn't see the big deal, but there was that that mentality that they're going to expect we're going to do all our orders with them. Like, they're just coming to talk about,
Yeah.
yes, it's probably 10% sales pitch, but the rest of it really should be, you know, So even that was,
Teresa, we've been real careful about the topics, like I was saying, and we've copied some of what, like the business council has done at Forum, but, like talking about supply chain. And so, yeah, there's a little pitch for their product, but then they talk about why it's hard to get tractors or hard to get whatever,
right.
and goes into and helps us understand, how to get ahead of the curve on things like that. So it's, we make sure we put that twist in there that it has to tie to some procurement topic.
Yeah, you set that expectation, maybe even in a forum when that chair for the sponsor chair, if you have one, or when you set that expectation with maybe an agenda when you're coordinating the people who are going to be on it, give them a heads up, set the expectation that we're not allowing, I'm sorry, our expectation is that we expect you to talk about your product, but the remaining 20 minutes of the 30-minute period will be open discussion with the other sponsors. So are you willing to, participate in that? And they'd probably be open to it. Now your board, though, that's the other part of this that I hadn't considered. So you got to work on them.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, Tracy and Casey are both on my board, and it's really not our board this year. It was like, members from before that had a lot of influence. And I think we're at that tipping point right now. Like we're kind of in the middle of it where we're seeing new things are happening. And it's really like, where are we going to go in the next couple of years where this stuff is really going to we're going to have to make a decision soon.
And as Trudy says, I know there's going to be exceptions to this rule, but I think in that supplier vendor world, they're also very aware that they can't stand up and speak and sales pitch for 30 minutes either. I think they're very much starting to understand that if they want to play this game and be in these collaborations, that they can't do those type of things. And I don't think that's historically how it was. It used to be, they got their foot in the door and then let me just spew it all out. I think there has been a shift and change. And Penny, I'm glad you mentioned the business council, because I think that's a good model of, those are a group of people that are suppliers, but go out and speak, not just about what they're selling, but about that collaboration and working with them and supply chain, or things that are going to matter to people, not just why you need to buy my tractor. I think they understand there's a much bigger picture. Again, you'll find probably some, others that you still need, to James' point, you have to coach a little bit and make sure there's expectations. But I say, Teresa, as that tipping point is happening, is to take advantage of that, is to slowly dip into that. And I think a sponsorship chair position is a nice way to get into that world for you all. Good discussion on that. Casey?
Yeah, so I just had a quick question kind of along the same lines. We tend to get a good amount of money from our title sponsor from like our reverse trade show. So I guess this would be kind of a question for like how you guys got Sourcewell or anything like that. But would it be, or has anybody done like almost like a reverse auction type thing where you put out a call for quotes on the title sponsor to see who would bid on it? I don't know, because we've set kind of a dollar amount and it's just been kind of first come, first serve.
Anybody on that?
Our MGPA just, reaches out to vendors, gives them an opportunity. We open it to anybody. We'll take anybody's money. And it just depends. We don't have a specific sponsorship program at this point. We kind of tailor it to the amount of money they have and want to spend, and you get a decreased rate as the dollars go down. So instead of being at all 4 conferences or having 4 lunch and learns, you get 1 conference and 1 or 2 lunch and learns, or you get a smaller article in our newsletter and advertising in our newsletter. But we definitely are aware that there's different budget amounts from these vendors, and we're doing more research to say, hey, if a vendor, a small business wants to sponsor us, hey, can we just put your logo on our website for X amount of dollars? So we are definitely being creative about what we can do to help those smaller vendors that want to participate with us and sponsor us, rather than just hold our money out for a trade show.
Casey, are you going to be at Forum?
No, not this year,
No,
unfortunately, just virtual. Yeah.
Somebody I may want to put you in touch with is Louisiana chapter. They just, and you were talking about how do you get Sourcewell? How do you kind of hook one of those big ones? They just got their first $5,000 sponsor for an event, which was a big deal for them. So let me see if I can connect you to, because I think they have actually a good program in place and kind of how they go about getting their sponsors. And it was a big deal for them to get somebody with a big name, big ticket. And it's for their conference. It wasn't for, throughout the year. It was a one-time big event. But I say that, but I don't know that their $5,000 is their fall conference, but you also get 2 meetings in the rest of the year. I mean, it could have extended farther than just that event, but I was going to say if you were there, maybe somebody to connect with.
Yeah, and we've been pretty lucky. I think our title sponsor for our trade show is about 4,000 this year. So
Oh, that's good.
yeah, pretty good. I just more my question is we don't know how much sponsors would be willing to pay. So are we capping ourselves at 4,000 when we could be getting 5,000?
I haven't seen much more than 5. I've never seen
Okay.
any chapter with more than 5.
That's
That's
good to know.
in the top amount. And I don't know that I can say that I've seen chapters that have 2 or 3 giving 5. I mean, 5 is kind of the pinnacle. I see a lot at that 500. Maybe you find 2 or 3 at 12 or 1,500. But again, I think it's making sure you decide that if you're going to open it up and you're going to have 5 available at 1,200, what do you have enough things to give each of the 5 at that event if you're doing it per event? Or do you spread it out and say, okay, we want 5 at this amount, and these are the things that happen throughout the year? I think it's more that than anything is that if they give the amount, what are you going to give them? Do you have enough stuff to divvy up that you don't have 2 or 3 doing the same things at the same times because they want their spotlight? So if it's a lunch and learn, you don't want 5 of them to have to give 5-minute spiels. They want to be the highlight or the headliner, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
But
So it sounds like we're doing,
I think if
doing
you're
pretty good.
asking for more than 5, you're going to have a hard time.
I agree. If you're going to ask for more than 5, make it an annual sponsorship that they get something at multiple conferences. So they have a presence at, excuse me, they have a presence at, if you have 2 conferences, they get, people, you get in front of the members. But again, I would agree if they want to give more than that, say, here's the whole year-long plan, and this is what we can do for each other. And then what we have found successful in, starting to build these partnerships is ask them for money for scholarships. They are definitely willing to give members scholarship money to do that. And we have gone to a model, we're just implementing this for our winter conference, is that it's an agency match scholarship. So instead of giving 10 scholarships for $200 a piece, we're hoping to give 20 scholarships for $100 a piece, and then their agency has to match that additional $100, because then we still are covering part of it, but then instead of only 10 people getting it, then we get 20 people there. So it will increase our attendance. But we have found that vendors are very excited about, providing scholarship money to our members.
Thanks, Trudy. Good feedback. Anybody else have anything on scholarships?
Yes, how do we get our scholarship winners that go to Forum to be invested in Forum and bring it back with them? Because we feel like some are taking advantage of a free trip.
Yep.
And we want to make sure that they're actually attending.
Yep.
And,
you are not the first to ask this question.
and
So
I think we've always tried to tell them to, you're going to speak in front of everyone. You're going to tell everyone how it went, but I think we need a little bit more behind it.
Trudy, what have you guys done?
So we have decided, we didn't offer any scholarships this year, but in the past, they have to write an article for our newsletter. So that has to go in to our newsletter about, what they brought from Forum, how does it benefit them, what that looks like. But we are also moving in 2024 to kind of the Sourcewell model, that we are only covering registration because then again, we can have more people attend forum rather than, you know, a $3,000 or $4,000 one person gets to go. We can offer, you know, 4 or 5 people to go and just cover that registration, because we have found, as you stated, that people tend to abuse that aspect of it because, oh, they want to fly into Boston and then, oh, we're going to fly out of DC and we're going to stay later. So then that became, oh my gosh, it's going to cost an additional XYZ dollars. So we have seen that as well, but we do require our members, if they're an award winner for any of our scholarships, to provide an article for our newsletter.
Even if you just cover the registration only?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like that idea.
I like the registration aspect, because, I've heard some chapters say that, if you're giving it to your board and some of the board members have been sitting there, it's the same people, they get to take advantage of that all the time. I've seen some people put limits on it, that if you got it last year, you don't get it the next year.
Yep.
That way there's not a perception. You certainly like it. I think there's a good selling or volunteer perk that if you're on our board or the president or vice president, the chapter covers for you to go as a sponsorship thing. But you also don't want people to abuse that so that you can't go take it every year. So Casey, is president, if you got it this year, you can't go next year. It has to go to somebody else. So that way you're not getting those same people taking advantage. I've seen the articles. I've seen presenting that you have to, at a membership meeting, not present procurement topics, but talk about what happened there. What did you see? In this day of social media, take a video, take photos, have them do stuff that shows that they're a little bit more present in things than just, yep, we signed you up and we wrote a check to MIGP and that was it. I think there's got to be a checks and balances.
Yeah, I think it's, sorry.
I had to chuckle. I had to chuckle when you said that about the video, because it reminds me in the old days where when somebody had to prove their location, they had to take a picture with a newspaper and the day on
Yep.
it.
But you could turn that into something fun. I mean, in this day, and we take that tongue in cheek, James, but you certainly can about, why would, as much as selling it of you being there, but what are the things that people miss? These are things that I got to experience and why it was a great experience for me and why you should apply for a sponsorship, a scholarship next year, or consider your agency going. It's a great way to document. If you've never been before, it's overwhelming and there's a lot there, but that can also be exciting to people to think, I didn't realize I could get this much here. You hear about it, but I've not been there to see it. So.
Is it a lot different in person compared to virtual?
Yes.
I don't even know that you can put them side by side.
Yeah.
The content as virtual, I think, is just as strong as when you think about the people that are presenting virtually or we are streaming it. I think there's something, and I'm old school. Maybe somebody who's younger may feel differently about this. I think there's something to say about what happens in person. It's who sits beside you at a class that's from somebody else, that all of a sudden you guys go down a bunny trail of a conversation that you would have never had in the virtual world, but learn something. I've heard people talk about going and meeting people that now they have built a network of, I now have 3 or 4 people that I can constantly go to when I'm in a crisis, that I need to know how to do something, how does somebody else do something that you just can't learn, I think, or get in the virtual world. It's that personal interaction and connection you get with people. Penny, I'm thinking about you as we talked about this the other day about being a volunteer and being engaged in these things networks you with other people. And I think in person does that. Any other experiences different from in person versus virtual for forum?
Yeah,
I
like
agree. Yeah, go ahead.
put on chat the at Boston, I don't know what it was, but every time we sat with people, they were from Florida. So so I met like Nick Kanger and Barbara Grilly, I think. And I mean, these are people that are very volunteered heavy in the NIGP, and it was like, oh, we met you in person. And Denise, I can't think of her last name right now, but
Mhm.
yeah, they're they're big, and it's like, hey, kept running into them. And so it was like, I have like a new group of Florida friends. And I'm in Arizona, so.
But I think
And-
to your point is true, especially coming year after year, it's people that you then reconnect with and people that you connect with throughout the year, either whether it's through our chapter network that you see, or you're on a webinar and you see that name of somebody that you knew from something. It's just, Cynthia, I'm not trying to talk down virtual at all forum, because I know, and I certainly want to promote our virtual forum, and there's dollars attached to that. And I know that everybody can't go. But there is a very different live experience. There's a buzz, there's a hum, there's a networking that's just so different. Trudy, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
No, I agree with what everybody is saying. It is the relationships you build at forum that, you know, you will continue to have for years. Also, one of the things RMGPA is looking at as far as being involved in forum is requiring them to volunteer in some aspect. Not that they have to, you know, do something huge, but you can be one of the greeters, or you can be, you know, a session monitor or whatever they're called, because then it gets you involved and you can understand that volunteer aspect of it, because it is that give back, not only to RMGPA because, you know, they footed the bill, but it gives back to NIGP because then it helps the big cause of the whole thing.
And Penny just said, Teresa, maybe it's a requirement that you become a QCT volunteer. It's kind of the
Yep.
entry level, the basic. The
Yep.
I think that's
orange
perfect.
coat,
Yep.
but it gets you that first kind of experience of
Yep.
being a part of, understanding the flow of the event. And our QCT volunteers come back year after year after year. I mean, it's a
Is
staple.
that sent out to everyone that goes to forum?
Everybody who registers
Okay.
will get the announcement on the Insight post and as an email to be a QCT volunteer.
Okay, good to know. That's happening.
Yes, it is. But no, that is, you know, that's a struggle. So I think you look at, you know, capping dollar amounts, maybe just looking at travel. What do they have to contribute when they come back? Maybe you can't do it year after year, whether either it's through sitting on the board or through points, or however you give your scholarships out, that there's time off or years off. So it's not the same people that you may feel are abusing the system. Or allowing new people to, or maybe part of it, you always have first timers as one of your options. If you give out 5 every year, that one of them has to be a first timer, you know, 2 are board, maybe set some of those parameters up to make sure that you're getting a different pool of people to go is an option as well.
Yeah, I think maybe doing a full scholarship for a first timer or board member or whatever, and then capping scholarships for the others would be good, because we do have that issue where it's been the same people for the last 6 years who have gone, and it's frustrating because our scholarship policy right now is a first come first serve, and those people know to have their stuff in like January 5th. And so it's the same people because it's first come first serve, but we are working on a scholarship policy right now to make some changes to that.
Tracy, I think that's a good idea. That allows, I think, some of that abuse to go away, that you have parameters that maybe there's a first come first serve for 2 slots, but every other ones have to fill a different need or a different specific criteria to spread that out to new people. Yeah, I like that idea. Guys, we're here at the top of the hour. We only had 3 major subjects, but I think we had some good dialogue about them. Anything for the good of the group before we go?
I did want to answer, I think it was Cynthia's question about how to get people to volunteer for board members.
Yep.
Was that what it was?
Yeah, for president, secretary, yeah, your top 4 positions.
I think the biggest thing for us is that it's part of our nominations. Every year in, I believe it's October, November time period, we ask for nominations for these. And I think the people who are a little bit shy about volunteering for this, think about it differently if they're nominated by somebody. They think, oh, somebody thinks that I can handle this and thinks that I'm good enough to handle this. And it also, in a way, kind of puts them on the spot. The nominations committee does reach out to them about that time to ask if they're willing to accept the nomination, to see if they want to take it on. But I'm also in the process of working on our committees to have an ambassador is what I called it. So if you have somebody who's kind of shadowing you and finding out what the position's like, because we're doing that with our committee chairs as well, that it gives them a chance so it's not overwhelming for them to see what it's like and get involved, so that it's something that they could take on the following year. But I think part of it is a lot of it is unknown, and that's what makes it overwhelming. And so if they have a chance to see what it's like and get involved without it being an obligation for them, then that kind of persuades them to do that. But also the nominations, I think if someone believes in them enough to say, hey, I think you'd be a great president or a great treasurer or whatever, I think that's easier than just them stepping up and saying they'll take it on.
Tracy, I love that. That's the way we do our awards program here at NIGP, is that someone nominates you and we reach out to them and say, so-and-so has nominated you for this award. There's something you have to do at the end of that to be considered for it, but it works the same way for a volunteer leadership role. I'm probably more inclined, because I may not raise my own hand and say, yeah, I want to put my name on the ballot. But if Tracy came to me and said, Jen, I want to nominate you and I think you'd be a great secretary, I'm probably more likely to say, yeah, I think I'll do that. I think that's a huge endorsement and helps encourage that person that wants to, that you think they have got the skill set they need to be a leader. I like
I
that.
must have a very shy group.
Yes.
Pre-pandemic, we couldn't even get anybody to nominate anyone.
Wow.
Big room full of people, and it's like, really?
And I've talked about this before. I think it goes back to setting up a database where you know your members.
Yeah.
And it's on the onus of your board is to, it's just like the vendor community, a blanket email saying who wants to volunteer and run for an office. You're not going to get everybody to raise their hand. It's going to be knowing your members and going to them and doing these one-on-one conversations, having a clear identification of what their role and expectations are setting them up for success. But yeah, I think majority of elections don't happen because they do a call out and everybody just says, yes, sign me up. It's because Tracy, James, Cynthia have gone to someone and said, we'd like for you, but you also need to know about them. You need to know that somebody is deep into finance in their job and they need to be asked for a treasurer. They probably will never want to be a president. They just want to deal with your numbers. So it's knowing kind of those details about your members of who to ask.
And also giving them an idea of what the time commitment
Absolutely.
is. That's huge.
Time, position description. I've seen some chapters write up by month, especially treasurer position. This is what is expected of you each month. This is what it's due, an estimation of time. Again, even if it's a lot of time, Tracy, I'm more likely because I know how to commit myself. I know where I need to give. Those things, I know it's a lot on the front end, but I think it will pay on the back end is to have all of that as detailed as possible. Even as a small chapter, I don't think it has to be our, Rocky Mountain with 500 members. It can be our, our copper chapter with 100 members. Still detail all of that. I think that makes people more inclined to want to volunteer. They know exactly what they've signed up for.
Yeah, I like that, Jennifer, what you said about having that personal conversation and just approaching somebody with a pat on the back and saying, you've been attending these meetings for years now and months, and you've been a contributing member, and we've had we see a lot of value in you, and you've brought, that accounting and that discussion on finances, and we think you'd make a great position for this. We would like you to consider that. And it would just be like, whoa.
Yep.
I think that's how I was asked to be on our board, was, been participating and attending and contributing. And then at some point they're like, hey, we'd like to nominate you for this. Would you consider it? And I'm like, yeah, why not? But okay. I hadn't thought of it before. Right. So Cynthia, you may have people in there that have been thinking about it. They're just waiting for somebody to approach them.
Right. And I think it gives them, I think all of us deep down inside want that pat on the back for somebody to reassure us that they think we're capable of doing it. And that we could be successful in this. And all you need sometimes is that little one-on-one to say, James, exactly. You've been here, you've been coming to meetings. You've been participating and contributing. We'd love to see you step up at another level, you know, and start having that conversation. What are you interested in? Would you be willing to start at something simple as secretary that's not as involved, and talk about the position descriptions and how much time does that? I think those conversations are huge, instead of, hey, we need volunteers, you know, fill out the form and we'll put you on the ballot.
And tell them they'll be supported too. They
Yeah.
won't be doing it by themselves. They'll have
Absolutely.
a group of people that are going to support them and raise them and encourage them.
Yep, I agree. Great, thank you, Tracy, for bringing that up. I missed that, Cynthia, so my apologies. So Tracy, thank you for catching that in the chat. So James, you had asked about what I will follow notes and minutes. What I will follow up with is a post in our Chapter Leader Insight community that will have highlights of what we talked about. The recording will be posted on the website, included in the next Leaders in the Loop, so people can go back and listen to the things that we talked about and highlighted. So those who missed, or James, you want to share the recording or pull those things out for your board, that'll all be there for you.
Okay, great. Yeah, Bob had asked me to attend since he was going to be on
Good.
vacation. So
Okay. Well, welcome. We're glad to have you.
thanks. I was glad I got to come in. It was a
Good.
very enjoyable conversation and a pleasure to meet all of you.
Good. Well, guys, we hopefully we'll see most of you. Sorry, Casey, not you or Cynthia now that I know it in person. But hopefully we'll see you guys just in, gosh, I think it's just 2 weeks away. Don't remind me.
2 weeks.
It's crazy. But if not, then we'll be back together the first Friday in September for our next huddle. So tell others about it when we're there at Forum. We'd like to have more chapters and some more dialogue. But thank you, guys. This has been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Linda, for joining us late.
Sorry about that.
That's
Bye-bye.
okay.
Take care.
You too.